Hello, families. Welcome to U.S. History 2021-22. My name is Mr. Morean,
And I'm Mr. Hartman.
and we are so excited to have you here. We wish you could be in our classroom with us, of course. We wanted to put together this presentation as a way to give a sense of what community building in this room looks like, as well as an overview of the content and the big ideas discussed. Go ahead and hide that so it's fully out of the way of our question: what does it mean to be an American and who gets to decide? This will be the overarching or essential question of our course, one to ponder in every different unit, every different era that we cover in our course, and thinking about what that means for us practically, ideologically, and how this question has come into focus depending on who is in power. This is something that's really important for students to consider: the relationship of power and how that role of belonging fits in with this experiment of American democracy. And we are super excited to have your students, any students who are watching along. We're excited to have you along for this journey with us this year. And so thrilled to be back in the classroom, of course. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. This James Baldwin quote that many of you have seen in my email signature already is really an ethos for me, a mantra that I come back to as a reason to do my job and a commitment to continue to refine it and take in more information and reserve the right to change my mind and model how important that is for our democracy with our students. So we'll encourage that of you and the conversations that you have at home that inform so much of what we discuss and do this year in U.S. history. I'm Kyle Morean. Yes, I pronounce my last name Morean. I use he, him pronouns, and this is the start of my 13th year in the classroom. I can hardly believe that. This is my 5th year here at Ballard High School, and I taught previously in Washington, D.C. for 8 years. Some highlights that I will include here of who I am. This is me. This is my wife Ingrid in the photo, and this is our 9-month-old Oliver, or Ollie, right there. He's a big part of my focus when I'm not in this room. I teach 9th grade ancient world history as well as this U.S. history 11th grade class. I am the club advisor for the STAR Club, that's Students and Teachers Against Racism. We meet in this room, and I'm also the head coach of the boys swim. I like to include some other hobbies of mine. Read, listen, watch is a framework that I often include with students. It can be a great way for you all to connect on what's in the Netflix queue for everybody.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Hartman. I use he, him pronouns, and this is my first year in a classroom as a teacher. I am the student teacher, or apprentice, and Mr. Morean is my teacher leader. He's leading me through this process of learning how to become a teacher. I'm currently enrolled at the University of Washington, Bothell. I have a degree in education and an endorsement in history. A couple things about the photos on the right. That is my wife and I in the top right corner. We've been married for exactly 5 weeks now. On the left is my dog Ruben. And then the two people on the right with me are my niece and nephew, who mean the world to me and kind of guide a lot of my interest in working with kids and who I want to become. When I'm not at school, I'm spending time with my wife. Like I said, I'm cooking, golfing, playing basketball. And then below, just like Mr. Morean said, those are a couple of the things I'm reading, listening, and watching currently. And I'm so excited to be here with your kids. I will be heavily involved in this class throughout the entire year. I can't wait to get to know you, and I've already gotten to know your students, and they're all incredible so far. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Welcome, Mr. Hartman. Let's see. There we go. All right. I want to give a little overview of some of the big topics and questions that we're covering in the first semester. So we have a unique opportunity this fall pairing with the organization Citizen University, a Seattle-based nonprofit. We're one of 12 classrooms across the country that is piloting their first ever set of curriculum known as Citizen Redefined. And one thing that's so important to them and to me when we use the word citizen, we're not talking about citizenship status. We are talking about the values and commitments to a community that could involve anyone who lives in the United States and commits to the creeds of American democracy and has nothing to do with paperwork or visa status. This is a 12-session curriculum that we are doing across the first 6 weeks of the school year, answering big questions like what is American democracy? Is it working? How could it be improved? How could we prepare young people to be the citizens and commit to something bigger than themselves? These are the great questions of civic engagement and really the ones that get me fired up to do my work well. This will culminate in a really exciting presentation of a "This I Believe" statement, the civic confirmation, as it's known in the curriculum. And the students will get a chance to present those in front of their peers. We will record them and share them with you. And I will encourage you to be involved in the process of students composing those as well as practicing them at home. We've also begun our first unit of content, which is looking at race and power and the creation of how our identities impact our interactions in society, who writes history, what stories get told. Students have just started to explore some of the ways in which economically, politically, socially, race was a construct that influenced so much of early life in American colonies, and the laws in particular that were written in those early days that we are feeling the waves and the echoes of in our society and are at the forefront of conversations about anti-racism and how we better understand our history as it relates to race. This has been an important through line in my course for the 5 years that I've been in Ballard, is a big part of my motivation for continuing to explore and learn more about and teach US history. Media literacy is one of my other areas of expertise. I was a journalism and media teacher in Washington, D.C. And so the tenets and questions of how do we know what to believe and how do we practice the skills of becoming an informed citizen are also another pillar, tent pole in my work as a US history teacher, and especially helping our students and our adults to navigate our way through the muck and mire of online information as it relates to doing society better, doing politics better, having better connections and communication with people that we love. The skills of media literacy will play a big role. And we'll also do a big unit on government and enfranchisement and looking at how this question of what does it mean to be an American and who gets to decide? Well, one of the ways that that question has evolved over time is looking at voting rights and enfranchisement. So the purpose and the focus of this course, it will be largely project-based. I hope to educate students politically, socially, economically. One of my interests in US history is continuing to peel back those different thematic layers and see what is behind each door. I think we have a lot to learn about the roles in which economics and power in economics have played in shaping US history. So I'm excited to explore that with our students this year. Ethnic studies has become a big focus with themes like social justice and social responsibility for change. This has largely been driven by the SPS district on the whole, and Ballard has a lot of teachers who are committed to this work. This has been central to my work since I taught in Washington, D.C., and informs a lot of my practice being involved in STAR. So this course will make an effort to include voices that have stereotypically been left out of the US history canon. I like to tell my friends and family that so much of the resources that I fold into US history in our course are things that I myself have consumed within the last 5 years. There's very little about my high school history education as a student that I am simply, reheating and offering up for students. This discipline has changed in a really important way in the last 20 years, and this course will reflect that. So this is what I alluded to before. This is part of the SPS directive and the commitment in our strategic plan to, quote, achieve educational justice. SPS strives to improve a safe learning environment, curriculum that incorporates students' life experiences, cultures, and instruction that's delivered by high quality, culturally responsive educators. This is an ongoing practice and one that I am committed to. I recognize my role and responsibility as a white cisgender male standing at the front of your students each and every day, and and am doing my continued best to challenge my own practice and uplift voices both in the classroom and through curriculum that have not been honored or prioritized in the past. Case in point on this slide, and Dr. Angela Davis. She's really the pioneer 45, 50 years ago on the topics of anti-racism that are finally coming to the fore today. She also puts forth this beautiful idea of radical imagination. How can we think bigger than the confines of the problem that we're trying to solve? This is such an important charge for our students as we try to imagine a better tomorrow. And to harken back to that Baldwin quote, we have to understand from where we've come if we hope to improve where we're going. Here are some parent resources that I would commend to you and could be a great way for you to engage in the conversation with your students as well as participate in our class. These are sources, again, most of which I have consumed in the last 4 or 5 years that inform this course greatly. Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning, Isabel Wilkerson's newest book, Cast, Jill Lepore's These Truths, of course, the old standby, James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. Students have just started drawing from the Scene on Radio podcast, Seeing White. This is a 14-part series that investigates what American whiteness looks like in culture and understanding the structural racism inherent to ideas of white supremacy. This is an incredible resource that has come out of Duke University that I would highly recommend. Lastly, I will plug an important documentary that our students will watch in this class. Many of you are familiar with Ava DuVernay's 13th on Netflix. I would highly recommend to you Slavery by Another Name. This is really the part 1 to 13th's part 2, and an important prelude to the story to understand just how the criminal justice system changed and penalized Black movement immediately following Reconstruction. And there's some really powerful learning in that documentary. A quick overview of assessment. If last year taught us anything, it's trying to expand how we can engage students and measure their learning and commitment and success in our course. So we will continue as a social studies department to drive analytical, argumentative CER writing, that's claim, evidence, reasoning. We have also implemented this year something I'm super thrilled about, and Mr. Hartman and I got to give great feedback to the first round of courageous students who presented last week on Current Event Fridays. These are student-generated topics. They are standing up for 5 minutes and presenting in front of their peers issues that matter to them that they are passionate about. This has 1 weekend already been just so incredible for student agency and voice and them getting to own the space and encourage deep thinking from their peers. It's been so fun to watch and be a part of already. This dovetails nicely into another assessment type this year of reflecting on big questions. These are, again, student-generated questions that will inform deep conversation in seminar, might inform a project learning topic, but will certainly be a part of their quarterly reflection in their journal and as they think deeply about questions that are and aren't related to our course. I'm really excited to get them thinking deeply and be back in school and be here while they are here. As a final couple notes, I just want to say that a big part of my ethic for teaching U.S. history and continuing to teach non-AP or on-level U.S. history is for the access for all students and the practice that we are doing for society, social studies for society. I hope to impart on your kids a space and an environment that is about creating dialogue across difference, that aims to promote listening to understand. We're practicing civic and civil engagement that we want to see in the world. There are going to be challenging political and personal ideas that come up, and I want you to know that I have no interest in creating a bunch of devotees, students who are just going to preach what Mr. Morean thinks. Quite the opposite. I want students to be a part of discussion and discourse, and yes, eventually debate on issues and ideas and not identity. We're not here to challenge anyone's personhood. We are here to try to do the experiment of American democracy better and give students a launching pad into their emergent adulthood and the opportunity for that. Lastly, I will just say to that end, family engagement and discussion is a must, whether it's some of these big questions of our course or if any of you have both, historical learning and artifacts or ideological big wonders and questions to offer, or the practical work of what civic engagement looks like. Any and all are welcome as resources, and your expertise we would highly welcome into our classroom. Our essential question that I will leave you with, and those of you watching at home again to ponder: what does it mean to be an American, and who gets to decide? Thank you very much for listening and following along with us. I'm Mr. Morean again.
I'm Mr. Hartman.
We're so excited to get to work with you and your students this year. Be well and be in touch.
Yep.